Running away overseas just because of a heartbreak is way too simplistic. I used to chuckle at such plots every time I saw them on TV shows. I never even imagined that fate would have something like that in store for me. I'm Alan Thompson, a businessman turning 43 this year. I work at a major sports manufacturing company, specifically in the product development department. I'm considered rather capable within the company. I was genuinely convinced that if everything stayed on track, I'd join the race for promotions at our headquarters. The one who jumbled up my destiny was a certain woman. Her name is Emily Johnson. She was in her second year of employment, still a newbie. Initially, she was in a different department, but this spring, she was transferred to the product development department where I work. Emily was someone who drew attention within the company. Her face was like that of a model, and she had the perfect figure. She was such a beauty that our public relations department asked her to model for them. On top of that, Emily was friendly towards anyone. A lot of male employees misunderstood her kindness. Who could have imagined that she would ever approach me? At that time, I was 40, and Emily was 25. We had an age gap of 15 years. On the way back from a drink with everyone at the office, Emily said she'd walk home with me because we were heading in the same direction. If we were headed the same way, I didn't mind starting to walk with her. Then, smoothly, Emily linked her arm with mine. I figured she was probably drunk. Despite being so young, she was quite physical. I walked without paying much attention, like I was soothing a child or a younger sibling. And then, Emily suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Emily had stopped while still holding onto my arm. Even when I tried to get her to respond, she just looked down and didn't reply. I thought she might be feeling sick. Worried, I leaned in to get a closer look at Emily's face. Then, something unexpected happened. Emily, standing on her tiptoes, her lips skimmed my cheek. Huh. I automatically covered the spot where she had touched me with my hand. Emily looked up at me, eyes wide as I panicked. A mischievous grin played around her lips. Aren't you a little oblivious, Ellen? Letting a girl go this far, you're not doing a very good job as a grown man. She purrs at me, leaving me too stunned to respond. As I stood there, dumbfounded, Emily, standing on her toes, whispered into my ear. Will you be my boyfriend? That's how Emily and I became a couple. News of our relationship spread quickly throughout the office. There were some jealous looks, but I was so happy that Emily was my girlfriend, I didn't care. About a year after we started dating, we began to discuss marriage. She seemed delighted by my marriage proposal, but I felt something was off about Emily's reaction. Our marriage plans weren't moving forward at all. The cause was clear. Emily was not at all cooperative when it came to marriage-related topics. She would cancel our plans to go venue hunting, saying she suddenly had urgent matters to attend to, or postpone our plans to meet her parents, claiming she was feeling unwell. Half a year after we started talking about our marriage, the topic was at a standstill. That's when I heard a disturbing rumor. Bad news usually reaches those involved last. And that's exactly what happened to me. The rumor was that Emily was cheating on me. A new employee who started in April, his name was John Davis, seemed to be quite taken with Emily. And the rumor was that Emily wasn't exactly too displeased. I wanted to believe in her, and I wanted to keep believing. But reality is cruel. I happened to stumble upon the two of them in a secret meeting. It was when I was scouring the document storage room for presentation materials with my colleague, Jim. The door to the room opened, and in came Emily and John, chuckling together. In a split second, we hid ourselves. The two of them stood closer than mere coworkers would, whispering and laughing about something. I felt like I was going to pass out. Then, Emily's words, like a dagger to my heart. I'm tired of playing nice with an old man, John. You'll keep me entertained, won't you? I've realized, just before getting married, that I can't stand elder care. In shock, I accidentally dropped the documents I was holding to the floor. Startled by the thud of the falling papers, the two of them turned to look. Emily's eyes widened as they fell on me. Unable to meet Emily's gaze, I quickly left the document room. That night, I turned off my cell phone and went to sleep. I didn't want to talk to anyone. That was all I had on my mind. The next day was Saturday, a day off from work. As soon as I turned on my cell phone, calls, texts, and emails from Emily popped up one after another. I deleted them all without reading any. It might seem cowardly, but I spent that weekend erasing all traces of Emily from my surroundings. Feeling refreshed, I went to work on Monday, devoting myself more than ever to my job. I consciously kept Emily out of my sight. Being busy meant I didn't have to think about Emily. And so, a month went by in a blink of an eye, without making time to talk to Emily. My boss seemed to know about the breakup between Emily and I, and was very considerate. It was then that the opportunity for an overseas assignment came up. It was open to anyone interested, so I immediately told my boss I want to go. Having Emily and John on the same floor was a stress for me. The overseas assignment was to New Zealand. I thought it might be nice to be free of various entanglements and face my work. In the New Zealand branch, including me, there were 8 Americans. Accommodation was provided, and though it was my first time being assigned overseas, I didn't feel inconvenienced at all. Rock climbing and free climbing were popular there. My job was to gather the information needed for the product development of these gears on site. To get the ball rolling, I had a phone number and address of a certain person, who I was told by my peer back at the headquarters to contact as soon as I arrived in New Zealand. I had finished unpacking for my moving in and was set to start at the office the next day. Without delay, I decided to reach out to this person. "Hello, this is Amy." She was American, apparently working as a guide for free climbing. She sounded younger and had a more adorable voice than I had imagined, which took me by surprise. I was introduced by Stevenson and wanted to get in touch. "My name is Alan Thompson. I hope I've got the right number for Ms. Smith." Upon hearing my words, and excited, "Oh, I've been expecting your call," came through the phone. When I mentioned that I would like to arrange a meeting soon, she promptly shared a few dates when she was available. I felt a little relieved that she seemed easy to work with. I had been worried about how I would manage if she turned out to be a difficult person to deal with. We agreed to meet at the branch office 2 days later at 3 p.m. Just as I was about to end the call with a "looking forward to meeting you then," she exclaimed, "Oh." For a moment, I was startled, wondering if I had said something to upset her. But it turned out to be a needless worry. I almost forgot to say welcome to New Zealand. I hope you enjoy your stay. With that, Amy hung up. I was taken aback and found myself holding my phone to my ear for a while, stunned. "Enjoy my stay," as I muttered to myself. A warm feeling spread in my chest. Amy Smith turned out to be younger and more petite than I had imagined. I had heard that she was 27, but wouldn't doubt it if she claimed to be a teenager. She had a clean-cut face with 3 beauty marks under her cool-looking eyes. Above all, her sun-tanned, lively smile gave me a sense of her strength as a living being on this planet. She was unlike any woman I had met before. "My name is Amy Smith. Nice to meet you." When I shook her outstretched right hand, I noticed that her fingertips were deformed. It was a climber's hand, I realized. The feel of her hand made me understand her commitment to climbing. I explained my job duties in New Zealand and sought advice from her. To which she replied with a smile, "Why don't you give it a try? Wait, rock climbing. Can I handle it at my age?" I've never done mountain climbing or bouldering before. What's more, I'm turning 43 this year. Embarrassingly enough, I'm pretty uncoordinated. Various anxieties crossed my mind. I suppose my anxieties must have been showing on my face. Amy, with an encouraging smile, reassured me. Age is irrelevant when it comes to taking on a challenge. Her casual remark left me responding with a dumbfounded huh. The very next day, I found myself looking up at a massive rock. I didn't feel like I could climb it at all. I had been briefed that it was a beginner's course, but it didn't seem like one to me. Behind me, Amy was officially getting everything ready. As I remembered my job and approached her, she looked up at me, flashing a grin. Today, forget about work and enjoy using all your senses. The tough job stuff will come later. I'd thought this since we first met, but something about Amy's smile chased away my worries. I turned back to look up at the rock. The fear I'd felt earlier was gone. In its place, a determination to make it to the top. Well, let's go easy. Amy patted my tense shoulder lightly. In that instant, I felt a wave of relaxation. Everything was going just as she planned, which made me break into a smile. My first rock climbing experience was amazing, to put it mildly. My entire body ached from muscle strain, and my sunburned skin still stung. But all of that was a comfortable kind of tired. I think I'll never forget the view I saw when I reached the top. Amy doesn't only cater to tourists from America but to people from all over the world. Apparently, she originally learned the allure of free climbing from her father and older brother. But when Amy was in middle school, her parents divorced. She ended up living with her mother. Within a year of the divorce, her mother remarried. The man she remarried was a doctor. Her mother pressured Amy into pursuing a career in medicine. Faced with high school entrance exams, Amy was torn. And then she ran away from her mother's house, determined to live her own life. She was laughing as she told me that she had run away on the day of her middle school graduation ceremony. When I went to my father's and brother's place, they had a new family and a new sister. I felt like I couldn't intrude. Over dinner, which she treated me to as a thank you for the daytime work, a slightly drunk Amy shared her life story with me. It seems she's had quite a roller coaster ride of a life. After telling me this much, Amy closed her mouth. She'll probably tell me more when the time comes. I thought as much and didn't pry any further. That night, I realized something. When the two of us are dining together, various people come up to Amy. Americans in New Zealand on working holidays, students studying abroad, local children. Plus, people who, at a glance, look like they're seasoned climbers. They all greet her with a smile, saying, "Amy." The topics of conversation are diverse. Consultations about studying abroad, relationship advice. There's also a lot of information exchange between climbers. "You're really popular." The sheer number of friends appearing one after another surprised me a bit. Well, it's kinda like my survival skills for living alone. It's important to value encounters and information. Raising her tumbler, Amy laughed. That smile was dazzling to me. Every time Amy and I met for work meetings, we were getting closer and closer. On her days off, Amy would teach me climbing. It wasn't until I tried it for myself that I felt the knowledge and information needed for product development, not just in my head but in my body too. I believe this will become my strength in the future. I can't thank my friend enough for introducing me to Amy. Then one day, a minor incident occurred. Unusually, I was working overtime, and when I got home, I found a drunk Amy passed out at the entrance of my apartment. At first, I was worried she was unwell and had fainted, but that fear was unfounded. Amy was sound asleep, breathing deeply in slumber. "Hey, Amy, you'll catch a cold," Please wake up." When I gently shook Amy, who was sleeping curled up like a cat, she groaned. It seemed she had had quite a bit to drink. There was no sign of her waking up, as she seemed to be in a deep sleep. I heard she is not a heavy drinker. The vivacious eyes that strongly impress me are hidden behind her closed eyelids and long eyelashes. Suddenly, I became interested in her beauty marks. "Can I touch it a bit?" When I whispered in her ear, Amy, still asleep, nodded like a child. Having received her permission, I carefully touched right under her eye with my index finger. From her eye back to the corner of her eye, I pressed each of the 3 regularly arranged beauty marks as if I were confirming their existence. Maybe it tickled because Amy's eyelids trembled slightly. Going any further would be risky. "Come on, wake up." When I tried to lift her upper body by holding her arm, a drowsy Amy clung to me. Caught off guard by the sudden event, I exclaimed, "Whoa," and tried to push Amy away from me, but she was holding on with such strength that I was unable to move. "Hey Amy, wake up. You're mistaking me for someone else." She must have mistaken me for someone else. That's what I thought, and kept telling her, "You've got the wrong person." Then suddenly, the strength in her arms gave way. She rested her forehead on my shoulder and said with a slightly hoarse voice, laughing, "You're Alan, right? Do you not like me? You never invite me. Does that mean I have no chance?" Like she was talking in her sleep, Amy said, "She's probably half asleep, I suppose." Honestly, I had noticed that she had a bit of an affection for me. And I'm aware that I'm drawn to her too. I don't want anyone telling me to consider the age difference. Amy is full of life, captivating, and honest. But I still don't have the confidence to reciprocate her feelings. Because I'm still hung up on Emily. What if I'm betrayed again? Or even if that's not the case, if Amy ends up falling for another guy and leaves me? I don't think I could bounce back from that. I know it's unfair. But I still couldn't take that step forward. That night, I put a passed-out Amy to bed and used a sleeping bag for myself. The next morning, Amy woke up panicked in an unfamiliar bed. And apparently, she was suffering from a horrible hangover. "You were sleeping by the door." When I explained what had happened last night to Amy, still panicking, her face quickly turned red. "I'm so sorry for the trouble." She immediately bowed deeply on the bed. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight, finding it hilarious. Usually calm Amy panicking was just too adorable. Since I was laughing so much, Amy, after lifting her head, puffed out her cheeks in a sulk. "Let's go grab some breakfast," I said, wiping the tears of laughter from my eyes. The loud growling sound came from Amy's stomach, and we both burst out laughing. Half a year had passed since I was transferred to New Zealand. My climbing skills have improved more than I could have imagined. Work is going well, and this branch office has become a topic of discussion at the headquarters meetings. I'm really glad that I came here. Such peaceful days passed for about 2.5 years, and I had completely acclimated to this country. Work was going smoothly, and my days were without complaint. Then, one day, an incident occurred. I received a message that Amy had been involved in a climbing accident. A guide, knowing I was close to her, had the thoughtfulness to notify me. I checked the hospital she was taken to and gripped my car keys with trembling hands. Seeing my state, the branch manager kindly offered to drive instead. He was probably worried that my shaken state might cause an accident. When we arrived at the hospital, a few familiar guides were standing in front of the emergency treatment room. They all had somber expressions, staring at the treatment room door. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was about to leap out of my mouth. One of the guides noticed me and beckoned me over. As I ran to him, he informed me that Amy is safe. Immediately, I felt all my strength drain away and I slumped onto a nearby bench. Apparently, Amy had sustained minor injuries, but her climbing partner was critically injured. A woman and child, who seemed to be the partner's family, came running down the hall in a frantic state. Just then, the treatment room door opened, and Amy emerged, with bandages wrapped around her left hand and head. She had a cut above her eye, which was a little swollen. Surrounded by her fellow guides, she kept repeating, "I'm okay." She then anxiously looked back at the treatment room door. It seemed her partner was still unconscious. Amy bowed deeply to the partner's family that had rushed over. Then, she hugged the worried children tightly. From a distance, I watched Amy explain the situation of the accident to the partner's wife in a calm manner. The partner's wife seemed strong, and it appeared as if she was consoling Amy instead. After finishing her explanations, Amy noticed my presence. I believe over 30 minutes had passed. Seeing my face, Amy's calm expression crumbled. It looked as though a string of tension had snapped. "Are you hurting? Are you okay?" When I asked her, Amy sank down next to me, drained of energy. "I wish it had been me who fell." In a strained whisper, Amy murmured. She said if she, who had neither family or anything to lose, had fallen, there wouldn't have been a problem. With tears streaming down her face, Amy told me it would be hard for her seriously injured partner to recover. I still don't understand how brutal that is. Amy was heavily burdened with the responsibility of having climbed together. I hesitated, unsure of what to say, seeing her so distraught for the first time. "I worry if you get hurt, Amy, so right now, I'm truly relieved you're safe. Just remember there's someone who feels this way about you." I didn't know if my words reached Amy. She cried incessantly, and I just waited next to her until she stopped. There was one thing I learned from this incident: that Amy was irreplaceable to me. I was still figuring out how to accept that fact. 3 days after Amy's fall, shockwaves hit our New Zealand branch. I was ordered to return to headquarters. It was true, 2 years had passed since I came here. I had made decent achievements at work. But honestly, I was confused by the sudden order. There were still ongoing projects, but the order from the headquarters was absolute. It's not possible to refuse a return to headquarters. Before returning to America, I had a decision to make. It was about Amy. Ever since I arrived here, her presence in my life had grown larger and larger. The only thing stopping me from taking the next step was me. There's a thought Amy has, accepting our somewhat distant relationship. Since her job is dangerous, she doesn't want to make anyone extra special in her life. I once overheard her discussing this with another guide. But perhaps it's time for both of us to settle down. Today is a day off. I had promised Amy to go rock climbing together. After that, I planned to ask her, would you come to America with me? I was convinced that Amy would nod in agreement. In the end, on this day, I was too concerned about that matter and couldn't concentrate on climbing. "You'll get hurt if you climb like that. You should stay down watching today, Alan." Seeing my distraction, Amy declared so. I thought indeed, Amy was right. I decided to watch from the base of the big rock as Amy began her ascent. It was a solo climb, so Amy switched to free climbing. She only used safety gear and conquered the rock with her skill, physical strength, and intuition. Watching Amy's climbing, it seemed surprisingly light. She seems to climb effortlessly, smoothly. She's not a power climber who ascends with brute arm strength. She uses the flexibility and timing of her whole body, concentrating her strength on one point to climb. Where to extend her hand, where to place her foot, where to move her body next. Her hands don't seem to hesitate, as if everything has been inputted. Most of all, I think Amy looks truly happy when she faces the rock, wearing a great smile. I had no choice but to revise my selfish thoughts. Wanting her to come back to America with me was just my ego. I can't take away her purpose in life. Climbing is Amy's life itself. I was reminded of that fact once more. When Amy reached the top, she waved her hand, saying, "That was awesome." While waving back, I muttered, "This is goodbye." A week later, I returned to America without telling Amy anything. I thought it was better that way. Our lives had intersected only briefly, and now our paths were diverging greatly again. I convinced myself that that is all it is. When I returned to the headquarters, I was surprised at how much had changed. I was shocked to find that Emily, whom I thought for sure had married John and retired, was still in the same department at the headquarters. And her last name hadn't changed. Apparently, she had been dumped by John quite early on. It must have been a fling from the start. After that, Emily gave birth to John's child on her own. A colleague told me that she became a single mother and was raising the child. The reason John is nowhere to be seen seems to be because Emily pleaded with her boss. She was furious with John, who refused to acknowledge the child. She revealed everything to the directors. That John had toyed with her and dumped her just before they were supposed to get married. No man can refuse Emily's pleas as she sobbed her accusations. As a result, John was demoted. It seems that a lot had happened while I was out of the loop. Upon my return to our headquarters, I was promoted to assistant department manager. I had earned a promotion. Far from being jealous, my colleagues were genuinely happy for me, as if it were their own success. I resolved to live up to the expectations of my supportive colleagues no matter what. Our department's unity felt stronger than ever at my boisterous welcome party. Next to me at the feast, slid into a chair, was Emily. I was greeted by a nostalgic scent of perfume. Her beauty remained stunning as always. It was strange to think that she's now a mother of one. "Long time no see, have you forgiven me yet?" she asked me, holding her beer and looking up at me with half-closed eyes. She seemed a bit drunk, snuggling onto me, making me feel uncomfortable. "I let that go a long time ago, you should too." And I meant it. Emily no longer held any place in my heart. To forgive or not to forgive, it didn't matter anymore. She had become that kind of presence to me. But it seemed Emily interpreted my reply to her liking. As she grinned a bit and said, "So," she scooted closer to me. "Why don't we start over? You haven't forgotten about me, have you?" At these unexpected words, I felt more repulsed than pleased. Emily looked up at me, clearly not expecting to be rejected. "I've found someone else over at New Zealand, sorry," I said, pushing Emily away. Then, Emily scoffed at me. "You didn't bring her back with you, did you? Isn't that just a fleeting romance?" Emily was still confident that I loved her. The sight of Emily clinging to that thought started to seem pitiful to me. That's the result of me respecting her way of life. That's how I show my love. You might not understand. Emily widened her eyes in surprise at my words, and then bit her lip in frustration. She must have wanted to retort but couldn't, and was frustrated about it. Having realized that I would not sway, Emily blurted out, "Are you nuts?" and stormed out of the party. Oddly enough, I felt a sense of relief. Something that had been stuck in my throat seemed to have finally cleared. Feeling a little lightheaded, I took out my cell and sent a text to Amy. "Sorry for flying back without saying anything. I wish I could see you right now. Long distance isn't my thing, but don't you think we can make it work?" The next morning, nursing a hangover, I checked my cell to find a reply from Amy. "Come to see me at least once a year." It was a short message, typical of Amy. "We may get married someday, or we might not. But I probably won't marry anyone other than Amy. A marriage certificate is just a piece of paper. We have our own way of doing things." And that's what I plan to explore with Amy from now on.